Ecclesiastes 8. Who is like the wise? And who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine, and the hardness of his face is changed. I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time and the just way. For there is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? No man has power to retain the spirit or power over the day of death. There is no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over him to his hurt. Then I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily. The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before him. But it will not be well with the wicked. Neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. There is a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. And there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity. And I commend joy. For man has no good thing under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep. And I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out.
With what could we compare wisdom? What parable or what analogy could we use to describe it? Wisdom is like a soldier who knows the orders of his captain and then marches out in the clear confines of his mission. With what could we compare wisdom? Wisdom is like a child who receives a gift and enjoys it, and doesn't trouble himself about all the other things that he doesn't have. With what could we compare wisdom? What analogy could we use to describe it? Wisdom is like the guest of a feast who, being invited by the host, does not bring their own food, does not anxiously search about the kitchen, but sits down at the table and enjoys the rich fare that he's been given. Wisdom. Wisdom is, over the view of this whole book, as it is a wisdom book, but this chapter in particular, Solomon is concerned with wisdom, among other things, but I think that's his focus. He wants us to be wise. I want to be wise. I want you to be wise. I think we have the opportunity this morning by the grace of God. So that will be the focus of this time together. wisdom and then just the upshot of wisdom, what wisdom produces. So we'll just focus on this as we go forward. The passage breaks up into three, I think, pretty natural sections. And if you take notes, I'll try to make it plain where we're going. First, talk about how wisdom remembers its limits. These aspects of wisdom, of what it means to be wise. First, wisdom remembers its limits. Second, wisdom reveres God's transcendence, His greatness, His otherness. Wisdom reveres God's transcendence. And then third, wisdom rests in God's providence. Wisdom remembers its limits, reveres God's transcendence, rests in God's providence. So let's just go right to it. Verse 1, again, wisdom remembers its limits within this passage. Who is like the wise, Solomon says? Who knows the interpretation of a thing? A man's wisdom makes his face shine. The hardness of his face is changed. The previous chapter, if you went back to chapter 7, I believe it's verse 25, Solomon said, I turned my heart to know and to search out and seek wisdom and the scheme of things. And now, chapter 8, he begins further seeking it out, further exploring the nature of wisdom. He says, who is like the wise? The implied answer to that is nobody. The wise are unique. There's something special about being wise. Wisdom gives a person the capacity to know the interpretation of things. That is, not only just to see things themselves, but also be able to see things for others, explain things to others. Wisdom makes a man's face shine. It changes the hardness of his face. Meaning, I think that it so sweetly affects the inner man that even the outer man is changed by the effects of wisdom. But it's not a tribute to wisdom, I don't think, as much as it is Solomon exploring wisdom, searching it out, bringing us along in his search of what wisdom is. Everybody thinks wisdom is good to possess. I think probably if you went up to anyone you met and you asked them, is wisdom a good thing? Probably no one would say, no, I don't want that. So we all think that it's good. We all think it's something worth having, but what's it really like? What is it? What is this thing called wisdom? The first thing I think this passage makes plain is that wisdom, one essential aspect of it is that wisdom remembers its limits. Remembers or recognizes its limits. You ever heard of the light phone before? Anybody ever heard of the light phone? Okay, got a few. So the light phone has this, I think, genius advertisement. I don't have a light phone, by the way. But it has this genius advertisement about it where there's this little video and the narrator comes on. The first thing that he says is basically, what you need to know about the light phone is there are many things that the light phone just cannot do. And that's how it starts, right? And then he goes on to say what things it can't do. It can't send email. It can't access social media. It can't get you lost in endless feeds. All these things that it can't do. One of the features of this phone is a self-aware limitation. And wisdom, I think, is like that. One of the features of wisdom is knowing its limitations. Wisdom has limitations. It remembers its limits. In fact, I would say that it's utterly essential to the nature of wisdom to realize that. We have to know its limits. If our conception of wisdom, in other words, gets too big and puffed up like a balloon, then it'll pop, and then it'll no longer be wisdom. So wisdom has its limits. In what way, though, does wisdom remember its limits? The wise person remember the limits of wisdom. First, I would say wisdom remembers its limits under authority, or with regard to authority. Verses 2 through 5. Read them along with me. Be not hasty to go from his presence. This is a king. I'm going to read it from here. Back up a little bit. He says, I say, keep the king's command because of God's oath to him. Be not hasty to go from his presence. Do not take your stand in an evil cause, for he does whatever he pleases. For the word of the king is supreme, and who may say to him, what are you doing? Whoever keeps a command will know no evil thing, and the wise heart will know the proper time in the just way. No matter what kind of reputation you have in being wise, according to Solomon, you're a fool if you reject the king's command. And here he's referring to an earthly king. Rejecting the king's command is foolish. As Romans 13:1 says, all authority is from God. Wise people do not buck against that. They don't act as though their big brains get them a free pass from basic obedience. All authority comes from God. And so they're not quick to go out from the king's presence, taking leave without being given leave. It used to be the case with royalty that it was a massive disgrace if you turned your back and walked away from them. Wise people take that into account. They're quick to keep with the customs, even, that will show honor, deference, and respect to authority. Think of Daniel in this case. I mean, Daniel is a tremendous example of many things in this book. When coming to interpret the dream of the arrogant pagan king Nebuchadnezzar, Daniel says, listen to this, my Lord, may the dream be for those who hate you and its interpretation for your enemies. Pagan, proud king says that to him. It's not flattery. It's wisdom under authority. And you see this throughout the book of Daniel because he regards the king's authority wherever he can. No one can justly accuse him of disloyalty because he's just a bad citizen. He just doesn't submit to authority. He doesn't care at all about what the king says. It's only when the king's command contradicts the greater king's command, that is his God's command, that he is willing to disobey him and contradict him. But in everything else, in his wisdom, he keeps the king's command. He shows him honor and deference. And in all of this, he knows the proper time for each matter in the just way, according to what verse 5 says. There's an aptitude that wisdom has to not just know the right thing to say or the right thing, but the right time for it, the right setting, the right place for it. Wisdom remembers its limits under authority, but it also remembers its limits in knowing the future. Verses 6 through 7. There is a time and a way for everything, although man's trouble lies heavy on him. For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be? Wisdom might be able to discern the proper time and the just way, but it still shares with the common lot of all humanity. Man's trouble lies heavy on him. In this place, Solomon is saying because he doesn't know what's going to happen in the future. And even with future events that we know that God has revealed, Many times it's the what that he's revealed and not the how, or at least not the intricacies of the how. And this goes with so many things. It goes with the Bible, future events in Scripture. It goes with any area of scientific discovery. We've discovered some amazing things by God's grace, His common grace even. But just keep asking the question, how? And pretty soon, you just have to say, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know how that works. Man doesn't know what is to be. No one can tell him what comes after him. Even if he can know the fitting time for a moment, the future is beyond the scope of wisdom. That prerogative lies with God alone. John Calvin says the future is entirely present to his mind. God doesn't know the future like a good mathematician knows an equation and can figure out how things are going to work out in their trajectory. He knows the future because he plans it and he has eternal knowledge. It is present in his mind, the one who exists beyond all time. Finally, wisdom remembers its limits in preventing death. Wisdom remembers its limits in preventing death. It cannot prevent death, no matter how wise you are. Verse 8. No man has power to retain the Spirit or power over the day of death. There's no discharge from war, nor will wickedness deliver those who are given to it. Literally, the original says, man does not have power in spirit to restrain the Spirit. And pair this with the next phrase and what he's saying here. I think it's clear that he's referring to death. You can't retain your spirit, the Spirit that God has given you. When the day of death comes, you can't retain it, keep it. You have no power to do that. No matter how wise you might be, you simply don't have power to hold on to your spirit when the day of death comes. There's no discharge from that war. Wisdom has no remedy for the separation of the soul from the body. Wisdom cannot claim power over the day of death. As Charles Bridges points out, there's only one son of Adam who has been able to do that. John 10:18, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. Or listen to what our Lord says again, Revelation 1:17. Fear not, for I am the first and the last and the living one. I died, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I, Jesus says, have the keys of death and Hades. I hold them in my hand. We don't have power over the day of death. Christ alone has power over death. Who else do you want to follow? Tell me about your philosophers. Tell me about your religious leaders. Tell me about their power over the day of death. I just have one question to ask. Have they abolished death? I'll follow that one. Christ alone. He has power over death. Christ alone has the keys of death and Hades. On the last day, he will raise us. But in the meantime, wisdom must remember its limits, and it does not have power, no matter how wise you are, over the day of death. Wisdom not only remembers, that's where we were first here, right? This first passage. Wisdom not only remembers its limits, But wisdom, part of what wisdom is that wisdom reveres God's transcendence. Verses 9 through 13. Just start off in verse 9. Solomon says, "All this I observed while applying my heart to all that is done under the sun, when man had power over man to his hurt." Solomon continues to seek out wisdom and encourages us, his readers, that these thoughts are all from his own careful observations of God's world, everything that he's seen done under the sun. All of this he had observed in the position of being king, and presumably he's seen hundreds of instances of the kinds of things that he's now writing down and has been kept for us over all these years. As in other places we've read in Ecclesiastes, he turns again, I think here briefly, to the topic of oppressive leaders. He says, man having power over man to his hurt. Man having dominance over man to his hurt. But if you think about it, much of the wickedness that happens on this planet horizontally, that is from man to man to our fellow man, much of that wickedness is some shade of dominance or power over another to their hurt. Some shade of it. Could be as high level as Joseph Stalin subjecting millions of people to starvation. Or as commonplace as a group of coworkers denigrating someone's character behind their back. There's a kind of power that they're holding on to and using over somebody else to their hurt. But true wisdom takes us in another direction, because right at the heart of true godly wisdom is this, that wisdom reveres God's transcendence, God's highness, his otherness, his being above all this world of weariness that is under the sun. Wisdom reveres God in his transcendence. Verses 10 and 11. Then, and so, I saw the wicked buried. They used to go in and out of the holy place and were praised in the city where they had done such things. This also is vanity. Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. The wicked people spoken of here, probably those with some kind of societal prominence, some kind of leadership. And as they're being lowered into their graves, Solomon recounts some aspect of their lives. While exerting power over others to their hurt, he says they used to go in and out of the holy place. Kind of gives you chills. Likely referring to the temple itself or some other sacred precinct. He's talking about the wicked here. They used to go in and out of the holy place. In our language, Solomon would say something like, I used to see them go to church. Yeah, the wicked went to church. They went in and out, smiled at the doorway, sang the songs, they joined in the liturgy, they bowed their heads, they gave to the offering. And then they died, and people praised them with empty words and vain sentimentalities. Sound familiar? You ever been to a funeral like that? Solomon takes all of that in and says, what vanity, what futility is that? Because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed speedily, the heart of the children of man is fully set, filled to do evil. What do you think he means by that? Loved it. We were just in a little Bible study right now. Why? What do you think he means? Because the evil deed is not executed speedily. There's not a quick sentence against it. The heart of the children of man is fully set to do evil. Isn't he saying something like this? Since people carry out their wickedness and don't face swift punishment, therefore no one's conscience is shocked by some kind of awful and decisive display of judgment. Isaiah 26:9, when your judgments are in the earth, O Lord, the inhabitants of the world learn righteousness. Seeing Korah and all his mutineers swallowed alive by the earth was a vivid object lesson of righteousness to Israel, was it not? If you see a new thing happen and the earth swallows them whole. But instead of that happening, Solomon is watching the wicked go down into the earth, not with it swallowing them whole, but with fanfare and songs. And everybody looks on, and nobody's heart is jostled and stirred to think of the horrible end that they met. No one's shocked awake by it. This is one of the reasons why you need a Bible. We need a Bible. Here's what I mean. If you are left to try to discern what you think God approves of in this world by mere circumstantial evidence, you will not have a correct view of reality. You'll get lulled into some kind of false sense of security, some kind of confusion. Just merely what your eyes can see. Oh, that guy won the lottery. God must be very pleased with him. Right? He's so blessed. I once had a man face to face tell me that he believed that God loved him because he asked for his favorite narcotic earlier that morning, and in the afternoon, God gave it to him. You need a Bible, friends. Don't be foolish. Receive God's revelation, His revealed will. Wisdom reveres God's transcendence, not the whims of our carnal pleasure, not the common consensus of fallen humanity. You need something better than that. So if you want to learn about true righteousness, look in the Word. If you want to have your heart set free from sin, abide in the Word. If you want your way to be kept pure, don't appraise reality by the common rate of society. Guard your heart according to the Word of God that tells you of His great and awesome transcendence and leads you in the fear of Him. It's where you go to learn true righteousness. And the fear of God. The fear of God takes us to verses 12 through 13. In this reverence of God's transcendence. Verse 12. Though a sinner does evil 100 times and prolongs his life, yet I know that it will be well with those who fear God, because they fear before Him. But it will not be well with the wicked, neither will he prolong his days like a shadow, because he does not fear before God. Did you catch it? There's only two classes of people, two categories of people. And the only thing in this passage that distinguishes them, just one thing, is the fear of God. Not attendance to the sanctuary or the temple. He's already said that the wicked went into the holy place. Just one thing that he is putting forward that separates the wicked and the righteous. The fear of God. Do you possess the fear of God? Whatever genealogy of faith you have, whatever accolades, whatever degree, however much you've studied theology, if we do not have the fear of God, Solomon says we are in the category of the wicked. Because wisdom reveres God's transcendence. What is the fear of God? Descriptively, the fear of God is what motivated Abraham to offer up his son Isaac. It's what Pharaoh was missing when he wouldn't let the people go. It's what caused Israel to tremble when receiving the Ten Commandments at Sinai. It's the beginning of wisdom, according to Proverbs. It's the target Satan especially set his sights on in destroying Job. It accompanies trembling and rejoicing in the Lord in the Psalms. The fear of the Lord is repeatedly set forth as the heart posture of a genuine saint. And the fear of the Lord is something every single human being is void of apart from the grace of God. There is no fear of God before their eyes, Romans 3 says. Fundamentally, the fear of God is not a conviction, nor is it a concept, nor is it a doctrinal agreement with categories of systematic theology. Just think of a time in your life where you were most afraid. Just afraid of whatever. Do you have something in your mind? When you were most afraid, what was the experience of that like? Maybe you saw a tornado coming at you. Maybe you were waiting on a diagnosis. Maybe you saw a loved one in danger. If you think about that experience, wouldn't you say that that thing, whatever it was, just captivated your attention? It took hold of your awe. You were just fixated on it. Didn't it affect your thinking and decisions and stir your emotions? Was it a concept to you that you just led a group and talked about? It was something that affected you, I imagine. What is the fear of God? To be more precise, I don't think I can do better than Jonathan Edwards. Put it this way. Evangelical fear, or gospel fear, genuine fear of God in a child of God, is a reverence of God arising from a sense of His transcendent greatness and glory. Reverence, awe, not slavish fear that just drives you 1,000 miles away from God, but this dread and awe and wonder that even makes you stunned and amazed and held in this fixed captivity, not to just His wrath and severity, but to His goodness and His mercy. We fear God for His love. Like the song we sang, let all mortal flesh keep silence, and with fear and trembling stand. Ponder nothing earthly minded, for with blessing in His hand, Christ our God to earth descended. We fear Him for all of His perfections, His transcendent greatness and glory. So wisdom reveres God's transcendence. It knows that no matter how much the wicked may prosper in this shadow of a life, in the end it will be well with those who fear God. It may not be able to put it all together in this life, but it will be well with those who fear God. And in the end, God Himself will show the distinction between the righteous and the wicked. Right now, they live in the same house. They're even sometimes married to each other. They walk down the street next to each other. They're co-workers in the same business. God has not forgotten the distinction, and he will one day make it plain, so that the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Wisdom remembers its limits first. That's where we were. Wisdom reveres God's transcendence. It's second. And then third, wisdom rests. Wisdom rests in God's providence. Verse 14. There's a vanity that takes place on earth, that there are righteous people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the wicked. And there are wicked people to whom it happens according to the deeds of the righteous. I said that this also is vanity, and I commend joy. For man has nothing better under the sun but to eat and drink and be joyful. For this will go with him in his toil through the days of his life that God has given him under the sun. This particular text puts something very plain that has caused much distress to the saints throughout history. It's been called by different names. There's a law, you could say, that permeates the moral order of all that God has made. Some people would call it the law of retribution, law of justice. Basically, that the righteous deserve to be rewarded and the wicked deserve to be punished. It's the foundation of, pretty much any society as well, at least on some level, that those who are righteous should do well, they should be rewarded, they should be esteemed. Those who are wicked and do wrong should be punished. It's one of the most fundamental principles of justice. Proverbs 13:21 says, "Disaster pursues sinners, but the righteous are rewarded with good." It's how it's supposed to work, right? That's justice. And it's what we would expect in a world that was made by a good, just, and holy God. But as Solomon states, there are times in this world under the sun where things do not happen like we would expect. Instead of being punished and suffering affliction, the wicked are often filled with riches and honor. Instead of being rewarded with good things, the righteous often are filled with affliction and shame. In the Bible itself, several saints express perplexity, really deep perplexity and distress about this very thing, the prosperity of the wicked. To name a few, David, Jeremiah, Habakkuk, Elijah, Malachi, Job, Asaph, Moses. What about you? Have you ever, are you now wrestling with that? The prosperity of the wicked. If that's the case, just let this sink in that you are not alone. In the history of God's people, there has been much wrestling with this. The God of justice over it all, and yet the wicked just prowl around the earth and full of pride, and they just seem to do everything without any problem at all, getting richer and richer and having no issues. Charles Bridges' sage advice. Let this encourage you. Say then, Christian sufferer, does your heart rebel to see the wicked prosper and yourself in woe? Would you change places? Is he better off than you? Are his earthly blessings better than your grace? Is not Jesus more than silver and gold to you? Do you have the lesser portion because you have the Lord? Leave yourself with God and be at peace. Let this living faith preserve you from that brooding discontentment which seems to throw a cloud upon the goodness of your most gracious God. Brother, sister, wisdom rests in God's providence. All of its dispensations, all of its apparent perplexity right now. It rests. Leave yourself with God and be at peace. One day, all the blurred edges of his governance will come into focus, and Christ will be all in all. But until then, you don't have to know how it all fits together. Wisdom doesn't claim to know how it all fits together. Wisdom rests in his providence. What about joy? Solomon commends it, he says. As he says, man has nothing better under the sun than to eat and drink and to be joyful. This is not a license for self-indulgence. It's talking about wisdom, and then he just says, just go off, eat and drink, be self-indulgent. You're going to die anyways. It's not what this is. Rather, I think it is a connection point to rest in God's providence. A tangible, practical connection point. When you enjoy food, drink, and the simple, wholesome pleasures of life, hugging your children, a shared meal with friends, being able to see a parent that you haven't seen in a few years. When you do that, you share in those things, you are in the position of a receiver, if you have eyes to see it. A receiver from God, who's given you these things to enjoy. So enjoy these things. Enjoy with a humble thankfulness to God. And as Solomon says, you will have rest and refreshment to accompany you in the toilsome business of this life. It's kind of, I think, like if you've ever seen Lord of the Rings or read the books are not filled just with, the fellowship of the ring just sitting around feasting all the time in self-indulgence. They've got a mission and they're making their way somewhere, but there are these interspersed moments where they share a meal together, and they sleep and they rest and they laugh together and they sing a song together. And these things accompany them along the way as they're on their mission. This last section, verses 16 and 17. When I applied my heart to know wisdom and to see the business that is done on earth, how neither day nor night do one's eyes see sleep, then I saw all the work of God, that man cannot find out the work that is done under the sun. However much man may toil in seeking, he will not find it out. Even though a wise man claims to know, he cannot find it out. In the full application of his heart, literally, I gave my heart, is what he says. The preacher comes again to the limits of wisdom. Even giving his eyes no sleep, day or night, looking at all the work of God, man cannot find it out altogether. To find it out, I think, means to make a full discovery, fully comprehend it. It's not going to happen. No matter how hard you try, you will never be able to grasp a comprehensive explanation of how this world works. God has made it, and his paths are beyond finding out. Wisdom does not hear that and despair, but it rests in his providence. Wisdom rests in God's providence. To be God means to have comprehensive knowledge of all things. To be God means to know how to uphold the distinction between the righteous and the wicked. To be God means to be the overseer of every mystery. But to be a creature is to know in part, to wrestle with perplexities, and then just to receive and steward whatever revelation, whatever mysteries God gives to us. That's the way to wisdom and peace. And this is how the Apostle Paul speaks, right? He says in 1 Corinthians 4, maybe you've caught this before, "This is how one should regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God." Not authors of the mysteries, right? Not rulers of the mysteries, stewards of them. And the greatest mystery that God has ever unveiled, by far, is Jesus Christ. Colossians says that Christ himself is the mystery. If Solomon could recognize, friends, the wisdom of resting in God's providence even before the cross, before the greatest revelation in history, how much more now should we be able to rest in his providence when he's brought us into his most premier secret? And he has brought you into that, brother, sister in Christ, his choicest, most premier mystery. So let us not be like Eve, who is deceived into grasping for wisdom on her own terms. Whatever desire for some aspect of wisdom and insight may dominate our thoughts, we must remember we are not able to grasp with our own hands in 10,000 years what God is able to give in a single moment. Rise up and grasp what God has not ordained for us is to instantly become a fool. But to humbly receive and rest in God's providence, including everything that he reveals to us, is to become wise. Wisdom. Wisdom remembers its limits. Wisdom, it reveres God's transcendence, and wisdom rests in God's providence. Who is like the wise? And who knows the interpretation of a thing? By wisdom, a man's face shines, and the hardness of his face is changed. So, become wise, brother, sister. Like a soldier who receives his captain's command and marches out in the confines of his mission. Become wise, brother, sister, like a child who receives a gift and enjoys it and does not grumble and get troubled over all that he doesn't have. Become wise, like the guest of a feast, who upon being invited by the host does not bring his own food, doesn't go anxiously searching about the kitchen, but just sits down and enjoys the rich fare that he's been given. Brothers and sisters, the king doesn't like it when you bring your bagged lunch to his feast. But I made this sandwich my own hands. Look, brother, leave it in the fridge. But I got to bring something. Brother, just bring your hunger. Just bring your hunger. And sit down and eat and enjoy and be at peace.